Hmm. Well, I mean,
Let me
I
try
guess
to
like
redo this video there.
right off the top, you kind of like obviously you have to play them differently, but like I remember I played a lot of there was this
So
game called Guardians of Middle Earth that I played a lot of back in like 2012.
okay.
Or 20, yeah, like 2012, 2011. And it was a top down MOBA. It was like a Lord of the Rings MOBA. Um and like that compared to this, it's like a different type of game, right? Like Fault Paragon definitely feels a lot more like an action game, whereas the top down is always going to feel a little bit more like a strategy game.
Yeah.
Um, feels like you're in like a top down. I don't know. At least for me, top down games have always felt like I'm less of controlling a player and more so I'm like the God's eye view. I don't know why all your videos are super chunky.
I don't know either. But yeah, no, just keep talking. I'm just gonna try to fix it right fast.
Um, and like I think for me, if I think about like going from, the only MOBAs I really knew about were League and Dota and obviously Guardians of Middle Earth and other stuff like that to playing Paragon for the first time and the verticality of it. You can have a lot more of an interesting arena, I think, um when you have I'm trying to say you can be a lot more invested into the match and the game world. But also I think that sometimes that can be a bit more distracting. I think that's something that top downs get to have a bit of a benefit in is when it's just that one plane, you don't have to aim up and down. Um, you can just aim forward or left or right and that kind of stuff.
What
I think they're both like extremely viable types with like top down obviously being a bit more traditional, but I think that the third person view ones I think can be a bit more engaging and more inviting to non MOBA people, like new people to the community.
Yeah, and I think that's why a game like League makes so much sense on, let's say, computer. And then again, when you look back at it, why Paragon did so good on whatever it's called, like PlayStation 4 and whatnot, is the fact that any of those top-down MOBAs, they're not super demanding. So anyone is able to play it. And that's why it got to so many people, because, again, people like me who just don't have that nice of a laptop, you're able to play it and it can play smooth and you're not at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
So that's the only sort of thing that you end up limiting your audience based on the third person, because it is, no matter what, even with the settings down, it's still going to be more demanding from whatever you're playing it on.
Yeah. What I think is really cool about the top down versus third person MOBA idea is with top down, there's certain limits. And with third person, those limits are kind of opened up. So what I really like is in a top down MOBA, like in League of Legends, you could never have a character that can fly. Like that mechanic, or run up walls. Like that mechanic just cannot exist in League of Legends. But in Fault, that's a very possibility that someone's able to fly up in the air. You know what I mean? Um, and that's like a part of the team fight kind of thing. And I think like stuff like that is what really is really cool. And I would love to see Strange Matter in the future once they run out of the assets. I would love to see them take advantage of the third person genre and stuff like that. I don't want to say this, but Paladins and Overwatch, that they've done it right when it comes to that. You know what I mean? Like they have lots of heroes that do different things because they can do stuff. Like you couldn't have a Lucio character in League of Legends that can just bounce off every wall and do
Yeah.
360s in the air. You know what I mean? Like, but in Paragon or Fault, there you could definitely make that happen. You could definitely do that as an idea. Like, that's a true viable idea. I'm not saying it's a good idea, but it's definitely a possibility. It's something they do have the ability to do, and that's something I would love to see. And so I just wanted. So the point of this topic there is, besides to talk about the differences in our opinions there, and I would love to see what people think. Like, what are some things that you would love to see in the game that are third person exclusive? Something that could never be seen in League. And why I think that's so important is because it's those ideas that are really going to change. Those unique ideas are what is going to be the niche of Fault maybe one day, if that makes any sense. And so far, there's no hero in Fault or in Paragon that uses the third person aspect to their in their kit or anything like that.
Well, I mean, it's like,
So
to an extent. I mean, obviously, a skill shot in the top down compared to a skill shot in the third person is completely different. And then, because in the third person it's objectively going to be harder to hit a skill shot, they tend to have better payoffs.
yeah, they do. Well, because like in top down, like if the minions are in the way, you're gonna hit a minion. To where in third person, you can just throw your thunk right over the minions, no problem. You know what I mean? And hit the hero.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, like that's going back to that whole verticality and stuff.
Yeah, I would love to see them take advantage of the verticality. So I was thinking about a few things, and so my ideas for that were like, what if there was something to do with gravity? I guess I kind of already mentioned that, but like there's different kinds of gravitational pull because it's a third person when it goes up and down, if that makes any sense. Kind of like Sigrid in Overwatch, where his ulti throws you up in the air and then he smacks you down on the ground. You know what I mean? And I would imagine if his ultimate was that one hero just gets thrown up in the air and then smacks down. Like, imagine if there was a hero out there that had that as an ability. Like, that would be pretty cool. You know what I mean? It's essentially a knock-up, I guess is what you would also call it. But it's the way I'm envisioning it, it's different because you would still be able to use your basics in the knock-up in any sense. And there could be stuff like there could be stuff to do with your aiming. So in League of Legends, you click on a character, that's how you just right click, bang, you hit your auto on them, whoop-de-doo, simple as that. But in Fault, you actually have to aim. So imagine if there was an ability that disoriented your character so that your aiming got all weird. So maybe an ability like when you try to shoot left, you're actually shooting right now, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like your abilities get all backwards for a thing.
Yeah, because they already have that kind of in Smite.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, remember the drunk fella?
Oh, yeah.
When he uses the ability that makes everything kind of backwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Steve, what do you think?
What do I think?
What off the top of your head, would there be anything that you think Fault could take advantage of that's a third person exclusive?
You mean a top-down exclusive?
No, something that would be unique to Fault that couldn't be done in a top-down MOBA.
Oh, okay, I'm seeing your point. Something they can take advantage of. I mean, what about like well, you can kind of do that in a top-down, but I've always thought about what it would be like having like multiple levels in like a map. Sort of know what I mean? Like you have like, cause like for the map currently, there's one level. Obviously,
like there's like tunnels.
Yeah, there could be like underground tunnels, or even like what if even like part of a lane, like went up onto a bridge or something like that, or there was like a hill that made another battlefield, but it was completely, it wasn't exterior to the main map. It was just above the main floor of the map. So like maybe like that's where like other buffs could be, or places for you, like other parts of the jungle or other paths for um what if they're like, I don't know, like
I
just
think,
ways to make the world bigger.
yeah.
I think, and then because like I always really liked the really high cliff area, and the ruin area of the original map, legacy map, and I feel like that kind of got left in legacy.
SS, thank you for the follow. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So just something kind of like the those staircases from the jungle leading into mid lane, like just having that verticality to be able to decide what angle you fight from, because you could just go right through the jungle wall, or you could just go up higher.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
down.
You can even
them.
like jump down and like surprise people. You know what I mean? Like if you're a Chimera, imagine like running through over this like big thing and you're like above an enemy, and then you just R1 onto them. You're right.
Because that's the thing. It's the disadvantage, because it takes longer to get up to that point. But then the advantage is more than likely whoever's in mid isn't looking up. They're probably looking either straight at the tower or straight at the minions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of giving you that choice between, hey, do I go just straight into the lane, which is going to take less time, or do I decide to go the long way around?
That'd be really interesting. It'll allow them to come up with like new ideas for maps and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was like a big area, like another battlefield, like all the way up on the top. Or what if there was like, no,
Just
what
say
if there
it.
were 6 lanes?
All right, Steve.
I was going to say, once we start editing the map too much, because again, just reference to previous streams, like with the most important thing being time. Like, I mean, I think that's personally why they probably never ended up having too many layers, because it affects your time. So
yeah.
What if there was teleporters?
You know what though? Like, how do I word this? I know it might not be viable in a MOBA. Like, I get it, but I come from a Call of Duty background there, and the thing that I loved about Call of Duty is that there's certain power positions, if you will. Like there's certain, and power positions are usually some elevated thing. So like, what's a map everyone that's played Call of Duty would recognize? Like firing range, for example.
Rust.
When you're inside of, or Rust, yeah. If you're in the wood building, there's like a staircase, so there's top wood and bottom wood, and like top wood, even though it's super exposed and you're like there's no real cover up there, it's still a power position because you can see so much of that portion of the map where it is, and it's such a main choke point that people always have to run through there, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I know that won't work in a MOBA. Like I get it, but I would love to see if we could have stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like if there could be like sort of quote unquote power positions, but in the jungle. You know what I mean? Because you can't really have power positions in a lane. Like I mean, you kind of can. Like Paragon sort of did, because I guess you could say having the upper being on top of like the lanes in Monolith when they started to go down was really cool. But I would love to see like that verticality be used more in the jungle, and that's where something like in Legacy they had a lot more verticality in the jungle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I thought I would love to see if that could be possible or not. I don't know if it would be. And I know jungle, Legacy jungle from Paragon is inherently like not very competitive and yada 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 whatever. But you can't say it didn't do stuff right either. You know what I mean? Like you can't say
it felt more like a jungle.
It definitely well yeah. Number one, it felt more like a jungle. You know what I mean? There
Yeah,
are
even though it wasn't laid out right, it at least still felt like a jungle.
Yeah. Yo, what is Cody doing here? Cody's crept on, guys. He's probably gonna get out with his life. Watch, it's gonna happen. Anywho, yes, that would be something I would love to see if they could use that. Or let's say they say no. There's no way to do it. There's no way to do it that that actually would be like a good idea without just like breaking the competitive integrity that they currently have. How do I think the pathing of the jungle could be? I made that a whole topic today, Black Neon. We'll have to get there. We'll get there. Oh yeah, itchy. There's no screen shake or anything, but that's because this is like an alpha. You know what I mean? Like once early access comes, you're gonna start seeing audio cues and screen shake. You're gonna know more. You're gonna know when you're being hit, kind of thing. Like that's gonna happen. Yeah, Black Neon. I was actually talking with Sockap and Dusty and Krusty, for anyone that knows, and a few other people, but they were like the main two talking, and we had this huge discussion about jungle pathing a few hours ago. Like this huge, it was a few hour long discussion. It was pretty awesome. Yeah. To get back to the point, yeah, I would love to see some kind of verticality in the map and just to do that. And let's say for some reason they can't do that because it breaks the integrity of what they're trying to do competitive wise or whatever it is. I want to see it in a hero kit somewhere. I'm not talking like they have to fly up in the air like the fucking Echo from Overwatch. You know what I mean? Or Pharah. Like I'm not talking like a Superfly. Like just so you know, a few feet in the air, so they're a bit harder to hit. Like that's one of their advantages, is that they're a flyer. You know, their movement's a bit more unpredictable. You know what I mean? I would love to see stuff like that.
Yeah, because characters like that, in essence, probably wouldn't get any movement speed debuffs from walking backwards.
Yeah. I would also love to see a character that's like super small, like super tiny or something, or they have like a shrink ability so they become hard to hit or whatever, something like that too. Like that there's two ways they can go about that. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Like that's how they get away, is that they're just super small.
They become little.
Can't hit them.
Super tiny. And it's not that you can't hit them; it's just that it becomes extremely difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
To the point that
especially
you're
with like ranged heroes that have like skill shots and whatnot.
Actually, now that we're just on that, I would think that would actually be awesome. Imagine if someone's like one of their abilities was that they gained like a movement speed buff and they became super tiny, and but like they can still be stunned and all that stuff. So it's not like you can't stop them, but they could use that to get in. Or that could be also a really good way to gank someone, because like they're harder to see now. So they're gonna run up on you, and then out of nowhere, bang. Because there's a certain character in League of Legends, and I remember seeing the trailer video for when they came out, and they're like this little cute little beast of some kind, and then when I'm pretty sure they ult and they become like a beefy beast kind of person, but they're still easy to hit on both sides. But imagine if there was a character that, there's like. They became super small and were difficult to hit. I think Smite has a character like
basically that. Just the whatever it is, the opposite of Rampage.
Sorry?
Because isn't that Rampage's ult just to become big?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's just the opposite of him.
Yeah, essentially the opposite of Rampage.
So instead of getting big and having a bunch of health, you get small and you have a bunch of movement speed.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think about that? You know what I need, guys? I need a soundboard. Because I have like a specific sound going through my head right now. And I wish I could play it.
What sound?
You know, like that do, do, do. Like right from that show, like, you know, like the waiting sound.
Yeah.
Do you think we should rename Rampage's ultimate.
Why?
To just just rename it Cocaine and Four Loco.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then you got Itchy there in the chat saying like he would love to see the monolith mid lane because there is so many different opportunities to gank from. Itchy, I see where you're coming from, and I actually think that's agree. But one thing I get worried about is when we start saying stuff like that. So Call of Duty this year decided they were going to stray away from the 3-lane traditional maps that they were used to creating every other year. So there are certain maps that have 12 different ways to pop out at an enemy and shoot him. Are you kidding me? 12, at that, you know what happens when there's 12 different ways? The person that is in the position where he knows a gunfight's coming just loses the gunfight 80% of the time because you cannot predict where they're going to come from. You just can't do it. You just can't do it. I don't know how else to put it. There's just too many ways. No matter how good your swipe is, you just can't do it. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's the one thing I don't want to see. So I agree with you, but I don't want them to get too crazy. Because I don't need that. I don't need that again. Ever.
Yeah, it's definitely about finding that happy medium because less can be more, but at the same time, you don't want to simplify it to the point of it just not being that interesting. Because again, that's kind of what they did from Legacy to Monolith, was just trying to simplify it, but they simplified it to the point of it just not being that exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. They got to make it more complex. You know what I mean? They just, first off, Strange Matter has openly said that they're trying to do that. They're trying to, there's a reason Dota and League of Legends are so big. You know what I mean? And one of the big things is the complexity of the jungle and the map. You know what I mean? Even though it looks simple, it's really not. And Monolith just don't got that. And Legacy has even less of that, believe it or not. And it's just...
Yep.
It just has to change. It needs to be more complex. I know it might be a bit more difficult for the newer player base, especially once this goes cross-platform. It's going to be extremely difficult because the one thing across platform, the only disadvantage with cross-platform, if you can call it a disadvantage, I would argue that it's not. But if we had to say there is one, it's that there's no such thing. There's not really a MOBA. There's no big MOBA like League of Legends that console players play. So because of that, the console player base is going to be extremely newbie. Extremely newbie. And MOBAs are supposed to be complex, and that can be really daunting and frustrating to a new player. You know what I mean? That's where I think that we're just kind of straying off topic, but that's where a very well-constructed tutorial is very important. You know what I mean? Because then at least you're giving them some.
100%.
Yeah. So, yeah. So enough about that. Steven Chandler, do you guys got anything else to say about that?
I'm sneezing. One sec.
So Itchy's the one that...
Oh, Itchy, that's you. No problem, man. I really enjoyed your kits. I'm actually excited to see what else you come up with. Yeah, so we're gonna move on. So the next topic that we got there is jungle layout, is what it is. So and then after that we got the rotation of jungle, I guess. And so I was watching Sylphin's stream, for anyone that didn't watch it, and this was, and not his recent stream, but the one before that. And he just said a few things just about the jungle, and we were theorizing about it, me, Steven Chandler, there over the past week anyways. And so Chandler actually brought photos of each of the jungles up from different games and stuff, or each of the maps. And so one thing that I would just love to say is, let's see if I can find it. I think if we go back just a tiny bit. Rip, it's loading now. Okay. Yeah, so anywho, while that loads, one thing that's going to change about the map, like we don't know much about the map at all and what's happening. But what I do know is that going into mid lane, if from anyone that played Alpha 3 weekend, going into mid lane how there was going into mid lane, there was like this little lump, I guess, and then you would fall down. In a sense, is a good way to put it. And that little lump, there was like this little ledge, and yeah, and that's so. Jeez, I keep losing my train of thought. That's like 90 times now. That little ledge, you could just fall off, and it's like going into the Orb Prime pit. You could just fall off. But what Sylphin mentioned there is that there's going to be a wall there now, so that you won't just be able to jump off and go into the Orb Prime pit and have open area. So you have to go left or right. You have to go around that block, which is kind of cool. In my opinion, it's going to be kind of cool. And because we don't got much about the map, like that's pretty much all I got. You know what I mean? And we're just gonna have to wait and see to see what it's truly like. But yeah, that's like the big thing. And with the jungle layout, one thing I really wanted to talk about with the jungle layout is static camps. So for anyone that doesn't know what a static camp is, so in Fulton Paragon, you know how all the minor jungle minions, the jungle camps, are all the same? You know what I mean? Like they all have the same amount of health, deal the same amount of damage. The only exception is the red buff. Well, in League of Legends and Dota and Smite as well, they have static camps where each jungle camp is actually different. It deals they'll have different buffs. They do different amounts of damage, and they deal and they have different amounts of health. And that I'm confident that is coming to Fault. It just kind of makes sense, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and why? And I just want to talk about why, like, that's just so much better. So for anyone that's never had the opportunity to have jungle camps, why jungle or static camps? Why static camps are such a good idea is because it actually adds like a composition. So let me put it to you this way: Chimera at the moment in Fault, and this is what we were talking about last night. Dusty, Sock, and I, and a few others. Chimera at the moment is really good early game, but he falls off in mid game. You know what I mean? So because of that, he's usually a character that you kill all the jungle minions and you immediately go for a quick gank so that you can get ahead because you're going to fall off as game goes down. To where someone like Sevarog is super weak early game, but super strong late game. So because of that, you can't really... you can, but it could just be a bit more difficult to kill all the minions, and you're probably not going to go for a gank right away. You're going to spend a bit more time farming inside your jungle. So what static camps do is it's going to change the way you rotate with the jungle, if that makes any sense. So if you're playing Chimera, you might start with the minion camp in the strong side of the jungle on the left first, because in all reality, for a Chimera, it's not going to make a difference, or it might make a difference because you want to hit level 2 quicker, even though it gives you slightly less gold, or vice versa. To where with someone like Sevarog, you might start in the weak side of the jungle with one specific camp because you know that Sevarog is not killing the red buff early game. Like, it's just not happening. He can do it, but he's going to have to back. You know what I mean? So what it does is it adds depth to the junglers. And that's what's really cool about it. So when you get to the top level and you start having your MOBA knowledge go crazy and you start learning all this stuff, yeah, Itchy, yes, sir. I just read your comment there now. Yeah. So what it does is it's going to put more emphasis on the draft too. So it's going to say, like, it's going to give a reason for you to choose a character, because if you know the other team just chose Sevarog, once you start understanding the game a lot, you'll know that Sevarog's jungle pathing is going to be a certain way, like the meta jungle pathing for Chimera. So you know, and you also are going to know that he's probably going to go for an early gank. So what are you going to do to go against that? So then it'll add depth into it to where even you might do an off meta pathing because just to throw off the enemy team, because they probably know what you're going to do. And it's also going to even add more to where at a certain moment you're going to be able to know, okay, Sevarog probably isn't going to get the red buff at level 1. He's probably going to go for the mini camp so he can get more gold. And because of that, you know that you may have the possibility of having a early gank to steal the red buff. You know what I mean? Or you might know at this point at 3 minutes into the game, one of the buffs spawn up. So, or at minute 30, whatever it may be, and one of the buffs spawn up, and you know that there's a high probability that Sev's going to be there, and that he's going to be at less than half health if he does the meta pathing. So now you're setting up a gank before the game even starts. You're setting up a gank in the draft.
Yeah.
Like, and that is why I think static camps are just so important, is because it makes every character the point of it is to have every character have a different pathing for the most part. Like, some of them are going to be the same, but there's going to be like a optimal path, and then like little twists you can throw in to throw off the enemy jungler. And it's also going to add stuff like you know that they're probably on the weak side of the jungle, so you can go steal one of their minion camps on the right side, on the strong side, and vice versa, because of the pathing of characters. So then think about this. So it's like you're playing mind games with the jungler, even though you probably never see him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
and,
100%.
And I just think that's really cool. And it just that is the kind of depth that Fault needs to get to, and they're working there. Like, I can tell you right now that because there's a few mods and stuff that came into and even Sylphin jumped into that alpha chat yesterday for a little bit, and I can tell you now that, like they said, like, they're getting there. Like, it's not going to be there right away, because there's a lot more important things than that at the moment. You know what I mean? Like, making a stable game is like the number one priority at the moment. But those depths of gameplay are so important to a MOBA, because something like League of Legends would have died 5 years ago if it didn't have that depth. You know what I mean? Stuff that is always changing, because once you play a game, imagine playing the same game for 6 years. You know what I mean? At this point, you literally know every character. You know, literally know every pathing. You know all this stuff. It's just like second nature to you at that point. So what's really going to make the game less stale? Number one, obviously, new characters always coming out, whatever. And the thing is that you're never going to 100% know what the other player is going to do, because there has to be different variations that they can do to win the game. And it's so cool, because with these jungle rotations in particular, it's going to set a precedent for what the rest of your team's going to do. So you could do stuff like, what's a good example? Like, if your offlaner, for example, keeps shoving the lane because he's Greystone, you know what I mean? So he keeps pushing the lane because no one's contesting you early game. And you keep pushing the lane into their tower. Well, now you have an opportunity to go steal a minion camp with your jungler in the strong side jungle, if that makes any sense. Because you guys can like coordinate that tactic. You know what I mean? And I just think it's going to be really cool. And then you're also, and it's going to go even more in depth. Like it's going to go to the point that like you might see a certain ward placement because of a jungle path and so on and so forth. So you might see, you know what I mean? And I want
to. It's fun being able to predict the enemy.
People might think this isn't balanced, but Kai players always went for greens sooner back when jungle hit way harder. Oh, 100% they did. And I wouldn't, Ichi, I wouldn't argue that that's unbalanced. Like some people might think, but it's just because he's stronger early game. Like some characters are better early game than others. And like that's there needs to be that. Greystone is an offlaner only. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If they play him in any other lane, you should be a bit nervous.
You're telling me he's not good in the jungle?
No, he's fucking not good in the jungle. Are you kidding me? Well, yeah, just because he's a tank doesn't make him good in the jungle. Anywho, yeah. Yeah, he's an offlaner. He is the anti-carry hero. He is a beefy boy. And Steve, so as someone that's a main jungle, would you love the idea of static camps?
Wait. I think we lost him.
Boys, he's gone. I think he's gone. Anywho, I was trying to ask Steve because he's like a jungle main. So he would do that. And yeah, anywho, so when it comes to jungle rotations and jungle pathing, I just think that would be really cool. And then it just goes so much deeper too. So what's another one? So with someone like Sev, we'll say Sev, right? Like it might be in your best interest because you know he's late game that you don't want to grab that red buff because you're going to be one hit and you know you have to back. And if you grab that buff, yes, you might optimize your gold out, but you're setting yourself up for an easy gank, and you're also setting yourself up for to be down in levels. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, just my shot there. And I just think that would be really cool because then it just adds different elements to the thing. So then with Sev, it might be more important to start in the weak side jungle and just to ignore the red buff or whatever other buffs that there may be in the game, because it's so important for you to get that gold up. Because if Sev is able to scale and get the farm he needs, oh my gosh, he's a force to be reckoned with. He is the carry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to where someone with Kai, it just might be like, yeah, man, just grab the buff right away, grab the mini cams, run, get a gank. You know, because you know that once you hit past the 20-minute mark, Kai ain't looking too good no more. Like he's starting to fall off very fast. I think I think that's the point of the jungle pathing, Ichi, is that like it's gonna do that. Is because once you start thinking about it, all it's gonna take is adding static camps into the game, and immediately you're gonna be playing mind games with your team comps and everything right from the draft. Like if you're the jungler, you're gonna be playing mind games with the jungler, even though you may never see him. And
I just heard that boy's door open.
Was that Steve's door? I heard
he might be back.
He might be back. We shall see. Yeah. I think that's all I got to say on that, to be honest. Chandler, what do you think?
I mean, again, it's just one of those things that I just want to play. It's just been so long since I played the game, just like being able to feel out the differences between the two and what I would prefer.
Yeah.
I definitely see all the bonuses to it, but
I think
I also just didn't play enough jungle.
That's true. Yeah, I'm definitely not a jungle main myself. You know what I mean? I didn't, but I did play my fair share of jungle, and I could tell you that would be really cool to see because it sets up everything. You know,
Yep.
you'll be able to gank in the jungle, steal jungle, set up ganks, set up wards, so on and so forth, simply because static camps exist because of jungle pathing, which is where they have to go to because the point of MOBA is every decision made, whether you thought about it or not, has to have a reason. Even, you know what I mean? Like it has to, and that's kind of the point of a MOBA. So that, and that's where MOBA, and that's, remember how like they say like, well, this guy has good macro, even though he's not hitting the shots. How is he winning? Well, because his MOBA knowledge is just that great.
Yeah.
That he knows what his win condition is with that character and with his team. He knows what he has to do to win this game. And even though he's might be missing a few basics or two and getting and dying because of it, ultimately he's still making the right play and he's winning. And it all starts.
Yeah, it's just being situational and setting yourself up for that end game.
Yeah. Yeah, and Ichi, like your example I just gave, like that's a great example, but it's not even that face valued. Like there's so many different options that you could do. Like sometimes when someone's getting ganked, it could be better to gank yourself or seal their jungler, or if you're in a position to support the person getting ganked, you know what I mean? And so on and so forth. Yeah. And so the next thing I wanted to mention was why, so out of everyone's idea, and this is something that Norwegianator actually brought up a lot. For anyone that doesn't know who Norwegianator is, he is a junior moderator in the Strange Matter Discord. He is honestly one of the funniest people I've met in the Strange Matter Discord. And he always brings this up, and he always asks his question when he gets the opportunity. So, and that is why is it that a jungle is set up why is a jungle asymmetrical? Why isn't it parallel like lanes? And what we mean by that is in Fault, you have the jungle on the left corner of the map, and you have a jungle on the right corner of the map. And for the strong jungle sides and for the weak jungle sides. But why isn't it that both strong jungle sides are on the right side of the map so that they're mirrored, so that they're parallel from each other? Why is it that they're not? And why why has that never been a thought? Like why is it a standard for it to always be asymmetrical? Like is there any real significance in it? And I guess
it's probably just so it's more so. I'm sure people typically do it. It's that muscle memory. If you're always used to it being on the left side of your jungle, if all of a sudden it's mirrored, depending on if you're light side or dark side, it's going to be to the left or your right.
Yeah.
So it's probably more so for, again, that higher tier play where everything is calculated and you do have your like exact route that you take.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're constantly thinking as a jungler, hey, wait a second, what's my orientation? It's not a huge deal, but I'm sure there's people who will be like, no, I want my left side jungle, my right side jungle to stay the same.
Seems kind of like a dumb thing to like expect, though. I mean, like, because if you're gonna make like, I have a few ideas that come to my head. Like the first thing is like, if you're playing soccer, you got to be able to shoot with your right and your left foot, right? Because there aren't always going to be scenarios where one, you can kick with your right foot, but then also it's like you just never know, and sometimes it's going to be helpful. Now, if the jungle is always on the right side and you don't want to like get people out of their weird, method or muscle memory, it just feels like I don't know. I feel like like it should be normal or okay to have to learn a lot more in terms of like, because if it's just farming, if it's just pathing like that, like I feel like it wouldn't be a huge deal. Um, and it would kind of, I guess, because if your strong jungle was on the right side next to the ADC and the support, well then it's normal. But if your strong jungle is on the left side, then maybe
Well, the
in
thing
terms
is,
of
so when you mirror it, you have the same jungle buffs on the same side of Raptors or Prime.
yeah.
That's the other thing. As soon as you make it asymmetrical, then
because so what Norwegianator's argument was of why, and he I think he was just doing it for the sake of this debate and discussion. What his argument there was is why he was trying to argue why parallel was better, um, or might be an idea to look into. And the reason for that is because let's say you're going for a gank, right, on the right side. Well, on your right side. Well, you now have the red buff that you can grab before you make the gank. So you might be at an advantage. To where if you're on the left side, you won't have that red buff to make the gank. So you're at a disadvantage. So because of the way the map's designed, you're immediately could be at a disadvantage. To where if it's parallel, there is none of that kind of thing because everything's equal. If that makes any sense. I personally like how it is now. But the way I think about it, why asymmetrical is better than the parallel jungle is, number one, I think if there's a parallel jungle pathing would be weird. Number two, you would see a lot more fights like on net. I don't know what it is, but just thinking about parallel jungle makes me think that you're going to see a lot of jungles just fighting for what used to be no reason, but now there's going to be a reason. Like, there's just going to be a lot more team fights. And you're going to lose out on the farm and stuff like that. And I also think of stuff little like, so when you hit like the big competitive level and stuff, something as simple as the jungler leaving his strong side jungle, crossing through mid lane to go to the weak side jungle, the mid laner's going to call out that he saw the jungle leaving and is going to the left side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or he's going over there for a gank. And this isn't coming out right, I don't think. But with asymmetrical jungle, because you have to go to the opposite side of the map to invade their jungle, it just adds a bit more risk. You know what I mean? And it also gives the enemy team a chance to know if you're going to be doing that, to where if it's parallel, it's going to be a lot easier to seal a random jungle minion, if that makes any sense. That's my only reason for it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I hope that was as clear as mud to some of you. The other ones, I hope it was clear as crystal. But yeah, that's the only thing. And just for another thing, so there was something that was just brought up with a few hours ago now, and one thing that was brought up is farm. So in Fault, you get more gold from clearing a full minion wave than you would from getting a hero kill. And a lot of people, like, when I say that sounds stupid. But I'm here to tell you why it's actually a great idea. And why every MOBA actually does this. Farm needs to be so important that the reason they make farm so valuable is because once you're out of the laning phase, why are you going, like, what's stopping you from just running around with your team and now we're playing Overwatch and not Fault, and all you're trying to do is push Orb Prime. You know what I mean? Like, what's stopping you from just having, you know what I mean? Like, that's not a MOBA. Well, I guess it is, but it's not. It's not a League of Legends esque Paragon MOBA. But when you make farm valuable and there is no limit to how high your characters can get, that's an incentive to go back in your lane. That even after the laning phase, you're still grabbing that farm because it's super important. If that makes any sense, and it's going to add that risk. So, it's always going to be a good idea to rotate. Don't get me wrong. So like if you're in the dual lane, the support and carry rotate to help out the mid lane kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because the mid laner's getting ganked or they're trying to set up a gank or whatever it may be. But you have to make that decision. You are risking losing one minion wave because you are taking the risk that you are going to get this kill. You know what I mean? Because if farming isn't important, after the laning phase is over, all you're going to see is a bunch of death balling occur. You know what I mean? Like, farming has to be super important. And Fault at the moment, guys, I'm telling you, if you're down 6 CS, you're down a lot. It's not a little bit. It's actually quite a margin. You know what I mean? You should be worried if you're down 6 CS. And if you're down 20 CS, you should be sweating bullets. And if you're down any more than that, you're losing your lane. Like, it's gone. It's chalked. You know what I mean? So, and that's just that's why so the importance of farming. I don't know where this came from and how this related to jungle, but we're here now. I just really want to know, like, the importance of farming is with that. Is there always has to be an emphasis on you are getting your minions. And that's the same thing with the jungle. The importance of grabbing your jungle camps, right? Grabbing those buffs, grabbing this and that. And Steve, while you're here, we were talking about jungle pathing. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're talking about jungle pathing. And so what it looks like is Fault's going to transition to static camps. So, like, you know how in Smite, there's, like, each camp has, like, a different amount of damage it will deal and a different amount of health? But in Paragon, like, all the camps are the same besides, like, the red buff or the green buff. Well, they're going to make it so that they're static camps. So every camp has a different amount of stuff so that there's a different jungle path for each hero depending on what their abilities are and stats and early game and mid game and yada, yada, yada. So what do you think about jungle pathing and why they're doing it? Just to reiterate there fast, is because right from the draft lobby, it's now going to matter what jungler you pick and what your other lanes pick to help to play the mind games of the jungle versus jungle. Because once you know, like, let's say Sevarog's pathing is whatever, you know that at minute 3 in the game, one of the buffs are going to spawn up. So you know he's probably going to be there to grab that. But he's going to be low health because he's Sevarog. So right from the draft lobby, you're going to be choosing a character so you can take advantage of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that concept of learning not just see, because there's a few levels there, right? There's a few levels there. It's learning your own hero's abilities, and then there's learning your enemy's abilities. But then from there, it's learning your enemy's, like, career, I guess.
Yeah.
And career in the sense of, like, what that character is typically trying to do. I feel like there was always those, like, there's those 3 layers of knowledge in a game, right? Understanding what the characters do, and then typically what their behavior is. I feel like it'll really benefit veteran players and reward players that put a lot of thought into the jungle, and I don't think it'll hinder players that don't look into it too much, in the sense of, like, I feel like it's not like it's something you need to completely exploit. It's just, you know, that they're probably going to be in this general area. at this time.
Yeah, and actually, Ichi just made a really good point there. Imagine a level of kiting coming back. So there's going to be like there might even be a different kind of kiting depending on your character and so on and so forth.
Cool.
I just think that'd be really cool because it gives you, there needs, in a MOBA especially, there needs to be more of a reason why you chose a character than because I thought he's fun to play. Like, yeah, that's also only maybe the main reason, but there needs to be like an objective reason why you chose said character over a different jungler. And that's where something as simple as putting in static camps is really just gonna make that difference. Because Steve, could you imagine playing and you know you're going up against a Kai and you know he's going to be strong early game, so he's probably going to start with his buffs, so you might have a chance to grab his minion camp on the right or something, or they might even take it more in depth with the static camps that a certain pathing might get you more gold but it'll make you a lower level.
Yeah.
Or there might be a certain path that you have more, you become a higher level but less gold. And Booker the Looker, thank you for the follow. I really like your name there. Yeah, I just think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely all for it. I think it's a good idea, and it'll add some more dynamics to the matches.
And with Fault putting such a big emphasis on farming, it's going to be really important that you know your jungle path. Like, I can't stress it enough. Like, I know you can't know about it right away. How the frag am I playing Paragon? First off, this is Fault. Don't disrespect me ever like that again. I'm just kidding. No, it is Fault, though. This is from Alpha 3 Weekend game, so this is actually just old gameplay. Back in March. I'm not actually playing this very second. Unfortunately. I wish I was. But for anyone that doesn't know, Fault will be coming out sometime in June and July is what they're aiming for. They don't got an exact date. They can't say June 28th or anything weird like that. But it's going to be somewhere in there, and it's going to be paid early access. The Steam packages are on Steam, of course. It's just gonna be awesome. I think you should really take a look. It's gonna be a fun game. I'm telling you. I played Alpha 3 Weekend, which is the gameplay that's on the screen now, and this is like full on alpha, and it felt those feelings that I used to get in Paragon came back. And I'm not saying this is a replication of Paragon, but like those feelings were there, guys, and I'm telling you, you're gonna have a nostalgia boner when you get to play Fault. And the thing that Fault's doing better than Paragon did, in my opinion, is they've learned from Paragon's mistakes, and they've trying to make the game more than just a nostalgia boner, because that's gonna the what's the word I'm looking for? The novelty is going to wear off after a while, so there needs to be more to it, and that's what they're working towards now in Fault, and it's awesome, and you can see it. You can even feel that difference in Alpha 3 Weekend, and the game now is nothing like it was in this certain gameplay. It's very different. I mean, games like, I know you say that, but like, imagine being the CEO of Epic and you said, yeah, Fortnite's going to make us $2 billion this year, or we can play Paragon that's going to make us 50 million. But we can only have one. Well, it's pretty, that's how I look at it. You know what I mean? It's not, they made a great business decision. It hurt my heart. It broke it, to be honest, but you know. Yeah. That's true. They could have. So where were we? So we were talking about farming, right, Steve? Yeah.
Yeah.
So imagine.
I think, pathing will be a really good thing.
Yeah. And what I think
with
they're
static camps.
and what I was thinking too. So Smite does this thing where there's a certain buff that's more beneficial for like the mid laner, the off laner, the jungler, and the carry. And I was thinking, what if they do something weird like that for a static camp, but in Vault? What do you think about that, Steve? Like, do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I think it could be interesting to try in Fault. It would definitely ask players to be more aware, I think. Maybe not making something that's like character defining, but like if you know that you should go and get this buff.
Yeah, stuff
It'll
like
just
gold buff.
yeah. Like you should
Mhm.
probably leave gold buff for the ADC or something.
Yeah, and it's not one of those
Um,
things like it doesn't have to be like early game. Obviously, the jungler is taking all the buffs. Like he's taking everything because he needs to level up too. But once you get out of the laning phase, that's where having these different buffs that are kind of more beneficial for the other lanes becomes really cool. And that's where, because I've talked about it before, maybe that's what their lane objectives are going to be. It's going to be the static camps itself. So now it's all wrapped in one little neat bow of all they're doing is adding static camps into the game and bang. They just made the game 20. They just literally elevated the game in 20 different aspects. That's actually incredible. You know what I mean? The invisible buff? Yeah, I didn't like the invisible buff. Well, I mean, the invisible buff, you know what was worse than the invisible buff? The black buff, the damage over time buff. Like, that buff was Jesus. It was a good buff. To where in the invisible buff, you could still see them if you had a ward. You know what I mean?
So, do you think that you should be able to have multiple buffs at the same time, or is it in Smite where you can only have one at a time?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember. I feel like there's one of them where you can only have one buff at a time.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good question, Chan. So, chat, what do you guys think? Should you be able to buff stack, or should you be able to just have one buff at a time?
Because I remember
think only
sometimes
one.
like people just got
Yeah, in
greedy,
Smite,
so...
it does not stack. You're right, yeah.
Because again, you could have somebody that shouldn't be taking buffs, that's just going around the map, just collecting buffs rather than actually doing their job in lane.
Game, why? I need to know why. Why do you think stacking is a good idea? Could you imagine, just think about it this way. I'm just going to could you imagine jumping around the corner and you see a jungler with a gold buff, a green buff, a blue buff, a red buff, and a black buff? You're going to be pooping your pants right then and there. Yeah, so what I'm and Black's saying, I think stacking is good, but I think it would only be 2 or more. Oh, only be 2 and no more. Yeah, so what I'm thinking, guys, is and if they do make static camps a thing, which I'm pretty confident they're going to, because it works wonders in other MOBAs, right?
Yeah.
There's gonna be other buffs. Like there's gonna be, you know what I mean? And we're not talking just river buffs. We're talking like other jungle buffs, minor jungle buffs.
And that definitely seems to be the trend. They're just trying to take the best aspects of all the other MOBAs and put it into one. Like there's definitely a place for seeing what has worked. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. Like, whether you like League of Legends or not, there's no that game had 11 years of polish. To say that game is optimized is an understatement. You know what I mean? Like some of their heroes need a bit of a balance, but like the map and jungle itself it's just that good. You know what I mean? So that's why someone like Fault's gonna adopt a lot that League of Legends and Dota have done. Do you guys see what I just did? I've said this before, but like this is how newbie I was during the Alpha 3 weekend. Like, because I changed my alt to my Q, and then I put the rest of it on my mouse. So I accidentally hit my Q button when I was trying to hit my W button, and just alted. Like, anywho, I think they should add a CPU that has objectives to complete, and both sides must work to stop him, or both sides will lose. Wait, like have like a neutral enemy that if you don't stop him, you'll lose. Wait, what do you mean, game? So I'm kind of curious now. What you mean? They have to stop him. Oh, and you would get a buff if someone stopped him, whatever team stops him. Yeah, that sounds something like Heroes of the Storm would do. Games. That's like a Heroes of the Storm's objective kind of thing. But stronger. What do you guys think about that idea, Steven Chandler? Imagine if there was like a neutral minion that at a certain point it's just going to run through you and both teams lose. So
I mean, personally, I'd kind of need that to be its own game mode, you know?
That I can see
like,
being its own game
I
mode.
see it being interesting and fun, but it'd have to be in a different mode.
Yeah. What if it was like a roaming thing that just like went around the map, and if you got in its way, it just like fucked you up?
Like the freaking horsemen. The 4 horsemen.
Yeah.
Walking around.
Yeah. And like you could like lead it towards other people. So that it like would fuck them up. So you could even use that as like a tactic. I don't know.
I think that'd be really cool, games. I don't think it's obviously not going to happen.
Like, he could eat, like if he could like go and like kill jungle creeps, and that's how he gets stronger, and like he ends up like fucking up your jungle.
But yeah, games, I actually really like that, because like they've already talked about like how they're going to have like an ARAM mode, and that could be another mode there in itself that they could have, so that when you get pissed off in your ranked play or public play, you now can just you have another game mode to choose from while still playing Fault to blow off that steam. Yeah, I actually think that's a really good idea. Oh yeah, so about the buffs. So, what I can say about the buffs, in my personal opinion, stranger's opinion there, I think someone shouldn't be able to have all the buffs. One person. However, I need to be able to have, like, I need to be able to take my enemy's red buff, even though I already have my red buff, or I already have the blue buff, and I need to be able to have both. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, you want to be able to take it. So now, do you think having 2 of the same should double the effect or double the length?
Sorry?
Like, let's say you get red buff and you have increased attack damage, and let's say, just for argument's sake, red buff is 30 seconds long.
Okay.
Do you think if you get a second red buff, if it should double your attack, but still for just your base amount of time, or should it be the same amount of attack, but let's say you have 15 seconds left, now you have 45 seconds?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would work. Yeah.
So that would make sense for, like, stealing the enemy's version of that same buff.
Yeah.
But let's say, even if, just to cover all the bases, even if they had the option where you can only have one active buff at a time.
Wait a minute.
You could still cancel out yours by taking theirs. Like, let's say you can only have one, so you have attack, but then you go in and you steal their blue buff, and now you have increased movement speed. But instead of them being able to have it, like, it just got rid of your attack. Now you have them.
Okay.
Rather than sometimes, some other games, the buff will drop, and since you can only have one, it'll just sit there, and basically the enemy team can just go back into their jungle and still sitting there waiting for.
Yeah, so it like reset the timer. I don't think it would reset it, Black Neon, but well, maybe that's what it would do, but it would extend the timer. So if you have the red buff for 20 seconds left in the red buff, but then you capture their red buff, instead of having a double red buff, you would just have a red buff for 60 seconds now. You know what I mean? Because you could imagine a double stacking red buff. Oh my goodness. Double the burn damage? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I think that's what it means.
On Countess.
Gosh. Yeah,
I think kills you at full health with their
Steve, what's your 2 cents about buff stacking and buffs
It's stupid. One buff, pick one.
Why?
It's not very team oriented. It's relying on variable too much. Because a buff is supposed to, it's a buff. It's not supposed to make your character, right?
Yeah.
And I think hoarding buffs is kind of dumb. I feel like you encourage a bit more team play when, like, yeah, you can be like, okay, we'll just give, the carry DOT and ability damage buff and, movement speed, and we'll just all, like, keep them alive. It's like, that's kind of dumb. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, yeah, we'll give, like, the carry, DOT. We'll give the, the jungle movement speed, and the mid laner, ability damage buff, and, the support, the shield buff or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit more tactical, and it requires a bit more.
Or when people used to spam good job because they were the ADC and you decided that you wanted to go get red buff, and they were right behind you trying to get it, and now all of a sudden they're freaking out because they think they own it.
Yeah. I see, Steve, I see what you're saying. And I think that was a really good point. And I think, like, you kind of convinced me that maybe buffs shouldn't stack. But at the same time, I want to be rewarded for taking an enemy buff and not just killing the minion. You know what I mean? And there's, I know in all reality, I could just, my teammate can just grab that buff. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. When you're a jungler or the solo laner, you take that buff and there's no chance no one else is going to grab it but you. And I don't want to just sit there and give the jungler a free buff. You know what I mean? Even though I took his gold. Does that make, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think that mechanic of absorbing it, and even if it only resets the timer of the buff you currently have active, or, I mean, there's a million and one ways to balance that.
Yeah.
But there has to be incentive to take someone else's, like, the opposing enemy's jungle buffs.
Yeah.
You have to have a reward for that, and it can't just be it.
I think it would just be as simple as some buffs stack, some don't. You know what I mean? That's what would happen. And it'd just be something you would have to learn. Because I agree with Steve, it does incentivize team play, and I think that's, like, the most important thing. But some buffs might need to be able to stack. Or it could just be, some buffs need to be able to stack. Would Prime stack if you already have one? You shouldn't be able to get Prime Black Neon a second time. Prime should not respawn before your Prime buff ends.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be...
That would be crazy. Could you imagine? Could you think about
Prime
it this way?
It's because Prime takes like 15 minutes or like 20 minutes to come up.
18.
And then the buff, so yeah, it's only supposed to last like a minute or two. Oh, stack if you had red. Yeah.
Prime would have to stack if you already had the red buff. Because, like, the way I look at it is, so there's minor buffs, which would be like the red buff, but then there's the major buffs, and those are or Prime Raptors. Orb Prime and Raptors buff have to be able to also be on your character while a minor buff is also on your character. Like, you need to be able to have both at once.
Here's a concept, just because I know later on we want to talk about it, so I just want to put a pin in it so I don't forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, so imagine if you get an additional buff for however many times your team gets Orb Prime in a game. Like, the first time you get Orb Prime, it's
You know what's crazy?
buff,
You literally just described the
you get
dragons in League of Legends. So literally how, I don't know, so for anyone that hasn't played League of Legends, so Baron would be the equivalent of Orb Prime, and Raptors would be the equivalent of Dragon in League of Legends. In League of Legends, Dragons gives you a permanent buff for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean a permanent buff, but more so. So let's say, what is the ability boost currently on Prime?
You do more
Just to get the
damage, your
spitball.
minions have more health, you have mana and health regen.
Yeah, so now imagine taking all of those, but the second time that you go and get Orb, all of those values are 5 to 10% greater than the first time you get it.
Okay.
So
like,
it's just every time you get it, like, because again, in reality, if it's spawning at 18 minutes, there should only be, let's say, 2 to 3 primes in a game. Like 2 to 3 times Prime gets activated.
okay.
So if you're the team that gets Prime all 3 times, that third time should be more than enough to end the game. But if you get it and then the other team gets it, you're still kind of balanced. Now whoever gets the last one, it's just going to be doing more than the last team fight.
So like have like an Elder Prime?
Well, and not even that. It's just like in the game state itself, like it can just tell, like you have just tiers of how many times you beat it.
Okay, yeah.
So it purely just knows, hey, light team got orb. This is their second time getting the orb values are going to be greater by this amount.
Thank you for the follow, Drew. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream.
Because again, it's one of those things where, like we've talked about before, we've all played those games where an enemy team can get Orb Prime, and let's say it's their second or third time getting Orb Prime, but your team is still just like built better. Like you just objectively, like back with the card system, you just had better cards. So even with Orb Prime, they still can't touch you, and now you're stuck in limbo.
Yeah,
it's just ways to make sure you don't get stuck in MOBA limbo where you're playing for an hour plus.
Yeah, but the only I see what you're saying, Chandler, and it sounds like a good idea. Off the top of my head, if I was to just play devil's advocate, wouldn't that make it like crappy for the enemy team though, or like your team? Like imagine if you were like, oh man, the enemy team already got it twice. Why is the even point of getting it once? They're already stronger. You know what I mean?
Well, again, it's still only an orb buff, so it's only active for what, a minute or two.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's only for that team fight, and again, like if you just have objectively better players, like there is some skill to it. You don't just get Prime and then you wipe the map.
Yeah, that's true.
And again, like let's say it maxes out, it's only a 5% jump each time. All of those values, like a 5% jump in what orb would have been the first time you got it, isn't a whole bunch, but it's greater. Like, I don't know, I'm just thinking of risk and reward, like knowing that, hey, if you got first Prime, you already know the enemy is really stressing to make sure they get Prime next time, and they really don't want you to get Prime that second time. So you just take it a little more serious as a team, and you don't just let them walk up on it, and you make sure somebody boards it because you don't want them to go there. Even though, again, these are things you should be doing, but when it becomes a game mechanic, it's easier for the casual crowd to understand the importance of warding it.
Yeah.
It just bakes that strategy right into the game.
That's actually a pretty good idea. Steve, what do you think? Steve
I think
RKO'd again? No, he's here.
no. I think I don't know how to word this. Brain taking a shit.
That's all right, man.
Come back to me. It'll come to me.
Okay.
The words.
Yeah, Chandler, I think that'd be a pretty good idea, because only thing is you gotta make sure that even if you got the buff once, it's still like extremely beneficial, because we're talking about Prime, right? Like he is the final boss of the map.
Yeah, and I mean, again, so that's the thing. Like, let's say a team has it twice, and the other team only ever had it once. Like, that buff that they got off that second one is still only a 5% greater buff than the team that got it on the third round of Orb being up, and it's their first time getting it. Like, so just a total of 5% greater, I just don't think is game breaking enough for it to be a problem. But it's enough when, again, you start getting down to those numbers and you're crunching, okay, how can we optimize every part of the game? Knowing that getting it twice is better than getting it once. Because right now, each time you get Prime, it has the same benefit, other than the fact that obviously, since the characters have been leveling up, their base stats are higher before the buff.
Mm-hmm. Which makes, that might be a good idea. Because the last thing you want is you don't want to get into that limbo. Like,
yeah, that's the biggest thing. Like, most times in most of these games, Orb isn't popping more than 3 to 4 times at absolute most.
Oh, that's a long game if it's popping 3 times.
Exactly, that's what I mean. So it's just, it puts greater stress on making sure you get it twice rather than once.
Yeah. No, I think that could be a good idea. And it's one of those things, guys, like, if you're losing and they're getting Orb Prime, just like, there's, without being like a poor loser, at some point when you're losing and you're not having fun because you're getting pooped on, because everyone has their games where they get pooped on, at some point you just want the game to be over and you want to go into your next game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's
what you don't want the penalty of quitting.
Yeah. And I think that's what Chandler's trying to say. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if they're grabbing the buff 3 times, like,
clearly they're doing better than you.
Yeah. Unless they're, like, they probably should already have the W by now.
Yeah, it should be pretty locked in.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually think that'd be a good idea.
It'd be interesting to see it being implemented anyways, and just like see other people's opinions on something like that. But, we can definitely take a 5 or so minute break, just if we want to be on time to be done here.
Yeah. All right, guys, we've been talking for over 2 hours now. We've kind of went a bit over time and kind of worked into Act 3 a little bit already. We always take a 5-minute break here now. So we are just going to do that. Take our little 5-minute. And, yeah, we will be right back.